Universities have finally included classical literature to their syllabus, which I think should have been done a lot earlier because without reading classics, your knowledge of literature is incomplete. Yes, they were created hundreds of years ago, and you might ask why they are so important in the 21st century. Well, classical literature is important because it has some very basic yet universal qualities encoded in it. There are layers of meanings, lots of metaphors, and basic questions about humans' existence and his consciousness that have the essence of life, which has not changed even today. Why do you think they are still appealing? Yes, because they have something in them which could connect a person from 500 BC as well as a person from today's world. You. As literature is the representation of life, you need to understand life to understand literature. Thus, for a literature lover, reading classical literature is unquestionably essential. However, let's start our first video of Mahabharata, the great epic from our culture. We do not actually know when the story of Mahabharata was created or even the events actually took place. Some critics think the actual events, if any, took place around 9th century BCE. It was first circulated orally like every other epic, and then between 4th century BC and 4th century CE it started being collected and written. Obviously, no one person or family was doing this task, but many people without being aware of each other. Though a little bit different, all of them maintained the chronology of the events to some extent. Scholars also say that Mahabharata was developed in three stages. First, the name was Jaya, which contained only 8,800 verses. And then the name was Bharat, where many other things were added, and it contained 23,000 verses. Later, it evolved into Mahabharata, which now contains more than 1 lakh verses. Maha means the great, and Bharat means the story. So, as a whole, Mahabharata means the great story. Yes, indeed, Mahabharata is the greatest story of the humankind, and for our culture, it is our meta text. To understand Mahabharata properly, you need to understand what an epic is. If you want a lecture video on what is an epic and what are its distinct characteristics, write that in the comment box and I will try to do that according to my understanding. In this video, I would be concentrating on Mahabharata itself. Mahabharata is the story of two brother clans claiming the throne of Hastinapur. The story starts far before the war of Kurukshetra happens, and there are 18 parts or 18 parvas to describe the events where people from at least 6 generations take part. These parvas are Sabha Parva, Bana Parva, Vishal Parva, Udyog Parva, Bhishma Parva, Drona Parva, Karna Parva, Shalva Parva, Sauptya Parva, Stri Parva, Shanti Parva, Anushasan Parva, Ashwamedhika Parva, Ashramika Parva, Mausal Parva, Mahaprasthanika Parva, and Swargarohan Parva. With these 18 parvas or chapters, there is another parva, an addendum called Harivangsh Parva, which describes the life of Krishna. Now, Mahabharata was officially written or created by Vyas, who is also a participant in the events of Mahabharata. Sometimes it is said that Vyasdev narrated Mahabharata to Lord Ganesh, who technically wrote the lines. But for our study purpose, we would not entertain such mythological conventions. There was this Bharat dynasty ruling in India, and one of their heirs is Raja Janmejaya. Sage Vaishampayan starts retelling Janmejaya the story of his ancestors, and this story is Mahabharata. With this, many important characters from our mythology are found retelling the story of Mahabharata to different people in different realms. Many events from Mahabharata are also to be found in the Buddhist mythology, the Jataka tales. If we go to the beginning of the story, we would find Raja Shantanu of Bharat dynasty to fall in love with Ganga, who gave birth to 8 sons, and youngest of them would be an immensely important character in Mahabharata, Bhishma or Devabrata. Mother Ganga killed her 7 children and left Bhishma to live a long life and went to the heaven because she came to earth only to redeem her sins. Bhishma is entitled to the power of the ultimate euthanasia. He can only die when he wants to. After Ganga leaves, Shantanu marries another woman called Satyavati, who was the daughter of a fisherman. Sage Parashar once wanted to make love with her as she was really beautiful, and as a maiden, Satyavati gave birth to Vyas. Yes, the Vyas who writes Mahabharata. I sometimes think how would have been the Indian society where a maiden, in spite of having an illicit child, could marry Raja Shantanu. Even just 2 generations later, Kunti had to hide the birth story of Karna. However, with Shantanu, Satyavati gave birth to 2 sons, Chitrangad and Vichitravirya. In order to secure the throne only to her sons, Satyavati makes Bhishma take a vow that he would always be unmarried and won't ever be a king. Sadly, both her sons die early without an heir. Ambika and Ambalika, 2 princesses of Kashi among 3, who initially were married with Vichitravirya, are now ordered to have intercourse with Satyavati's illicit child Vyas in order to keep the bloodline flowing and also because the throne needed a king. Illicit from the beginning, yet the war was to find the justified king to the throne. Funny, right? This itself proves wars are not needed but planned and executed for some purposes which are not really clear to the general people. What are that? Yes, we would discuss that too in the next videos. However, it is said that Vyas was so horrible looking that Ambika closed her eyes and Ambalika got yellowed of fear. And that is why Dhritarashtra is blind and Pandu is yellowish and diseased. As these first children could not be complete healthy men, Satyavati requested Vyas for another trial. This time, Ambika and Ambalika secretly sent their maid, and this gave birth to Vidura, another character who is also going to be very important throughout the story. Among Dhritarashtra and Pandu, the first one is the eldest. But he is blind, so he cannot be the king. Pandu becomes the king only for a few years and had to leave the throne when he got cursed for unknowingly killing a mating sage. His curse was that he is never to make love. If he does, he dies. After he is gone to live a celibate life in the jungles, Dhritarashtra is crowned the kingdom of Hastinapur and he marries Gandhari. Pandu also left the kingdom with 2 wives, Kunti and Madri. In the jungle, Kunti gives birth to 3 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna, and Madri gives birth to Nakula and Sahadeva. All these sons were children of gods like Dharma, Vayu, Indra and Ashwini Kumars and were not of Pandu. Kunti knew a mantra to call the gods to her womb and she taught this mantra to Madri too, and hence again they gave birth to illicit children. Gandhari in Hastinapur gives birth to 100 boys and 1 girl. Pandu once tries to make love with Madri and because of the curse dies, and Madri dies with him performing the ritual of Sati. Kunti returns to Hastinapur with her 5 sons where Dhritarashtra was preparing Duryodhan, his first son, to be the king. Now Yudhishthir is elder than Duryodhan and so everyone thinks Yudhishthir should be the king. From this point, Pandav brothers are gravely envied by Duryodhan, the elder of Kauravas brothers. He particularly thinks this elder brother be the king theory to be rubbish because his father Dhritarashtra was once denied by the throne in spite of being an elder. Duryodhan plans to kill Kunti and her 5 sons and creates Yatugriha and tries to burn them all to death. But they are informed by Vidura about the intrigue and fly away yet posing dead. Actually, they arrange one native woman with 5 sons from the jungle to die in the Yatugriha, so that after the fire is over, everyone thinks they are none but Kunti and her 5 sons. They go to exile, and after some times, Arjuna marries Draupadi, winning a very tough contest. When they return, Kunti orders them to divide whatever they came with in 5 parts. She didn't knew the fact that they actually came with a bride. During the competition, the identity of the Pandavas reveals and they are brought back to Hastinapur, and this time Dhritarashtra gives them 5 villages to rule, and with the help of Mayadanava, they create a very beautiful palace of illusion called Maya Palace. Their new capital is named as Khandav Prastha, as there used to be a jungle named Khandav Ban in its place, which Arjuna with the help of Krishna actually burnt down. Yudhishthir plans to do the Rajsuya Yajna in Khandav Prastha, and most of the kings submit to him and accept him as a king of the kings. Duryodhan is invited here too, and he is even more jealous on seeing Pandavas' prosperity. This jealousy of Duryodhan seeds the Kurukshetra war in the narrative. But Pandavas and especially Krishna too wanted the war to happen. The popular narratives, which are all in favor of Pandavas, never admit this, but a close scrutiny reveals a lot about the so called virtuous Pandavas. Story wise, what happens next would be discussed in our next videos, but we need to remember that Mahabharata is not just a story. It has numerous folk tales, fables, and parables included by the side of the main narrative for the moral teaching purpose. Characters here sometimes know beforehand their devastating fate, but still they continue to do what they once stood for. This increases their integrity and makes them even more heroic and provides the teaching that one should continue to do what is right. Indeed, fate, chance, and dharma, these three are very crucial concepts of Mahabharata. We cannot deny the fact that Pandavas are destiny's favorite children and Kauravas were never favored by the fate. It seems right from the beginning who is pointed to be good and who the evil. But Pandavas took bad decisions just like Kauravas did. The concept of dharma, which Pandavas always claimed to follow, were many a times adharma, and by the term dharma we do not mean religion, but morality and law as in that society. This discussion can go long and long, but we have limited time and very little concentration. So for today, let me stop here, and in our next video, we would start with the concept of dharma and then would progress the story of Mahabharata. Students who are pursuing Indian classical literature, they need to remember that 5 topics are very important to understand from Mahabharata. The social aspects of Mahabharata, the reason for Duryodhana's jealousy, the concept of dharma, position of woman, and the character of Karna. I would like to cover as much as possible in my lectures. If you find it helpful, do like, share, and subscribe, because together we grow faster.